Ludger Sylbaris, the punishment that saved his life. On May 8, 1902, 27-year-old Ludger Sylbaris was sitting alone in a stone cell beneath the prison of Saint-Pierre, Martinique. He was not supposed to be there. He had been thrown into solitary confinement just days earlier for brawling in the street. The cell was dug into the ground. The only opening was a narrow window slit, barely wider than a hand, facing away from the mountain. He was not thinking about the mountain. He was thinking about getting out. Saint-Pierre was known as the Paris of the West Indies, the most cosmopolitan city in the Caribbean. Opera houses, elegant boulevards, banks, theaters, schools, the cultural capital of an entire ocean. 30,000 people called it home. Mount Pelee had been showing signs of unrest for weeks. Steam venting, sulfur smell drifting into the city. A small eruption on April 23rd dusted the streets with ash. Scientists argued about evacuation. Nobody left. An election was scheduled for May 11th. The governor himself traveled to Saint-Pierre to reassure residents. The city had not been evacuated. 30,000 people stayed. At 7:52 a.m. on May 8th, Mount Pelee erupted. A pyroclastic flow, superheated gas and rock at over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, came down the mountain and hit Saint-Pierre in under 60 seconds. 30,000 people, less than 60 seconds. The Paris of the West Indies was gone. In the cell beneath the prison, Ludger felt the shock wave hit. Superheated gas forced itself through the window slot and burned him, his hands, his face, his back. He screamed. He pressed himself into the far corner. Then he did something that saved his life a second time. He took off his clothes, urinated on them, and stuffed them into the door slot to block the hot air. He pressed himself flat and breathed as little as possible. He was trying not to burn his lungs from the inside. He did not know what had happened. He called out. No one answered. He had no way to know that every person he had ever known in Saint-Pierre was dead. He screamed for help for the next 4 days. No water, no food, burned hands, burned face, burned back. He kept making noise into the silence. He had no reason to believe anyone was coming. This was the moment Ludger Sylbaris chose to survive. In that darkness, burned and starving, he decided to keep making noise. He kept yelling anyway. On the 4th day, a rescue team picking through the ruins heard something coming from underground, a voice faint below the rubble. They dug. They found Ludger Sylbaris, burned, dehydrated, barely coherent, but alive. He was one of only 3 people confirmed to have survived the destruction of Saint-Pierre. The other 29,997 did not. When word spread, the story became famous. Barnum and Bailey Circus offered him a job touring the United States, billed as the man who had survived the end of the world. He accepted. He was the first black man to perform in the circus's segregated show. He was eventually thrown out of the circus for fighting drunk. He moved to Panama and worked on the construction of the Panama Canal. He died there in 1929, impoverished and forgotten. His death was not known in Martinique for decades. He was not a hero. He was a man who got in a fight at the wrong time, and because of it, was in the only place in Saint-Pierre that the volcano could not reach. Stanley Williams, the scientist who became the experiment. On January 14, 1993, 39-year-old Stanley Williams, an American volcanologist at Arizona State University, stood inside the summit crater of Yeras volcano in Colombia. He had organized this trip himself. Yeras rose 14,000 feet above the city of Pasto and its 300,000 residents. Williams believed the volcano was quiet. He had led 15 scientists and tourists into the crater to take measurements. He had been inside active craters before. Many times, this did not feel different from the others. One colleague in the crater that day had brought a hard hat and flame-resistant coveralls. Williams had reportedly laughed at him for it, thought it was excessive. The gear was unnecessary on a quiet volcano. That colleague survived. At 1:40 p.m., without any seismic warning, Yeras erupted. The eruption lasted less than 2 minutes. White-hot rocks the size of footballs fired faster than a rifle shot in every direction. 6 scientists and 3 tourists were killed instantly. Williams was alive. He had a fracture in his skull. Both legs were broken. His spine was fractured. His jaw was broken. His backpack was on fire. He was face down on the crater slope, unable to stand. A volcanic rock had caved in the bone just above his left ear. It had exposed his brain directly to the air. Fragments of bone and rock were embedded in the brain tissue. He did not know this yet. He was trying to figure out which way was up. This was the moment Stanley Williams chose to survive. His brain went back to what it knew. Problems and solutions. Problem: broken legs, fractured skull, active crater. Solution: get to the rim. He started climbing. 2 colleagues, Marta Calvache and Patty Moth, had been on the crater rim and survived unhurt. They saw him moving on the slope and came down. They put his arms over their shoulders and carried him out. A Colombian Army helicopter flew him to a hospital in Pasto. Surgeons operated on his skull within hours of the eruption. He underwent 16 surgeries over the following years. His memory of the eruption was patchy. Some moments completely clear, others simply gone. Brain tissue embedded with rock fragments does not store memories cleanly. The 2 minutes inside Yeras had taken pieces of him that never came back. After the disaster, some colleagues said publicly that Williams should have known. Seismic warning signals had been present before the eruption, signals that could have predicted the blast. William said he had never received the relevant research. He returned to Arizona State University and continued teaching volcanology. He said the thing he thought about most was not that he had survived, it was that the people standing next to him had not. Havivra da Ifrile, 10 years old and smarter than everyone. On May 8, 1902, the same morning that destroyed St. Pierre, 10-year-old Havivra da Ifrile was near the waterfront when the mountain began to move. She was not supposed to be at the waterfront. Her mother had sent her to her aunt's candy shop that morning. On the way, she had passed Tire-Bouchon, a small satellite crater on the flank of the mountain with a tourist spiral path descending into it. She looked down. The floor of the crater was glowing red, like something boiling, with small blue flames rising from the cracks. She saw 3 people on the path trying to climb out. She watched the fire take them. Then she ran. She did not wait. While every adult around her was still standing still looking up, still deciding what to do, she was already running toward the dock. She grabbed a small boat, climbed in alone, and started rowing, away from the city toward the small island of Ilea Ramir, less than a mile offshore. She was rowing toward a specific cave, a cave she and her friends used to play pirates in as children. She had been there dozens of times. She knew exactly where it was. She did not need a map. She did not need a plan. She needed to row. She reached the island and pulled the boat into the cave. Behind her, less than a mile away, Mount Pelee erupted. The pyroclastic flow hit the water before it hit the ships. The harbor began to boil. 18 ships in the bay capsized or burned within minutes. The city of 30,000 people was gone in less than 60 seconds. Inside the cave, the temperature spiked around her. The rock held. This was the moment Havivra da Ifrile chose to survive. She had made the choice before the eruption. She had looked at the mountain and believed what she saw. She did not wait for an adult to tell her what to do. A 10-year-old girl made the correct read of a situation that every adult around her got wrong. She got herself to the only safe place within reach. She was still alive because of it. Days later, rescuers found her not in the cave, but floating unconscious in her burned, broken boat 2 miles out at sea. The eruption's force had pushed her out of the cave and into open water. She was still alive. The official count of confirmed survivors from St. Pierre on May 8, 1902 was 3 people. Havivra was one of them. What is documented is the choice she made, the one that every adult around her did not. Brian Depauw, the pilot who jumped into the ocean. On December 9, 2019, Brian Depauw was a helicopter pilot working tourist flights to White Island, known in Maori as Wakari, an active volcanic island 30 miles off the coast of New Zealand. He had been on this job for exactly 28 days. This was his first unsupervised flight with the company. His 4 passengers that day were 2 German couples visiting New Zealand on a cruise ship. During the safety briefing before the tour, Depauw made his usual joke to the passengers. He told them, "If you see me run, follow me." He said it every time. It always got a laugh. It was not supposed to ever be relevant. When the eruption came, Depauw was on the island. Not on the boat. On the island, 500 feet from the water, walking back toward the helicopter with his 4 passengers. He heard a low, dull boom. He turned. He saw the plume going up. He shouted, "Run, run, run, toward the water, follow me." The exact line from his safety briefing, except this time it was not a joke. He ran 650 feet to the shore. The eruption sent a cloud of hot ash, steam, and volcanic gas outward from the island. The tourists in the crater had no time to react. 22 people on and around the island were caught in the blast. Depauw had seconds. He looked at the eruption cloud. He looked at his helicopter. He looked at the ocean. He made a calculation that took less than 1 second. He chose the ocean. He ran to the rail and jumped. He pulled himself as deep as he could, putting as much water as possible between himself and the sky. He did not jump from the pier. When he reached the end of the pier, the eruption's force projected him off the edge and into the water. He did not choose the moment of entry. The volcano chose it for him. What he did choose was what happened next. He took the biggest breath he could and pulled himself as deep as he was able to go. He had 28 days of experience. He had a helicopter 50 feet away that he did not try to reach. The helicopter would not save him. The ocean could. Underwater, everything went black. The ash cloud had blocked out the sun completely. He saw a glimmer of light and swam toward it, but it disappeared. He thought he was not going to make it. He held on anyway. He surfaced once, then had to go back under. A second wave of ash was still moving over the surface. He went down again, waited, and came up a second time only when the sky above the water was clear enough to breathe. The first thing he saw when he surfaced was a dark wave passing overhead, ash and gas moving like a shadow across the surface of the ocean. After close to 2 minutes underwater, light finally broke through the ash above him. He surfaced. He was pulled back onto the boat. His helicopter had been completely destroyed, blasted off its landing pad, rotors snapped. 2 of his 4 passengers had made it into the water with him, relatively unharmed. The other 2 had not reached the water and had suffered serious burns. Of the 2 who survived with minor injuries, 1 could not see. The ash had scratched his contact lenses. The other had lost his glasses in the ash cloud. Both were alive. Neither could see clearly. Depauw was the only one whose eyes were working. He spent the next hours helping injured survivors. He held people whose skin was peeling off from the burns. He ferried them to the larger boat. His own injuries when it was all over, a cut knee, a pulled muscle, and some ash in his eyes. Of the 47 people on or near White Island that afternoon, 22 died. Brian Depauw, 28 days into his job, had made the single best decision anyone on or near that island made that afternoon. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button for more. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and see you in the next one.